Well, last week we learned the state needs more than $170 billion to avoid a water crisis in the future. The Texas Water Development Board released that information and more in its draft of the 2027 State Water Plan. It's now asking the public for feedback. Well, Brady Franks is the director of the Texas Water Development Board. He joins us now to break down the plan. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
No, yes. Thank you for being here. All right, let's start out with that huge number, $174 billion needed. What are the reasons behind that huge number, and why is it so large?
So when the board was considering the new state water plan, we took into account some considerations, and one of them is that a lot of the data from the previous water plan was pre-COVID, and so the supply chain shocks and the inflation have caused some of that to increase. Obviously, we're increasing the planning horizon from 2070 to 2080, which caused some increase as well, as large as the addition of some big mega regional projects like large reservoirs, which have a pretty high price tag.
No, that's right. And another highlight, another big number from the draft I noticed was the population increase. Can you talk about how many people we're going from and just the reasons behind that growth?
Absolutely, and that's one of the inputs of the state water plan is kind of what we think our population increase will be. And across the state, it's about 53%, but for the Austin area, it's almost 100%. It's almost doubling over the next 50 years. And that's true of a lot of the major metros in Texas, like Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio as well.
And we're talking about around 52 million people by 2080. Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay, and so you just kind of segued into my next question. A lot of that growth is in this region.
It is.
How much of Austin contributes to that?
Significant. That is a large part of it.
But like,
yeah, most of it is coming from the Austin area. Okay. Obviously, our region contains more. It's kind of by river basin, and so it's more. But Austin contributes most of that in population.
Wow. I mean, that is a lot there. Okay, at the same time, I saw in the plan that water supplies are expected to decrease by 10% by 2028. That's not great.
No, and that's a driver, obviously, of why we need these additional projects. And so a big part of the water plan is actually conservation and reuse. So how are we going to use our existing resources better, along with planning for additional projects that can provide that water supply for future Texans?
Conservation is always important, but with summer coming up, I find it a challenge to tell people to stop using drinking water to water your lawn, because we all want green lawns, right? So how do we attack that challenge?
That's a big part of it, obviously public information, but the city of Austin is actually doing a lot of really interesting projects with water reuse. Mm-hmm. And so using water that would not necessarily be treated, but for things like golf courses.
The toilet.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And so using that water more efficiently so it doesn't have to be treated to then be used to water things where you use treated water for that purpose.
You know, if no action is taken, tell us what will happen.
So part of the state water plan is that we estimate that there will be $177 billion in economic damages each year by 2080 if the water plan is not implemented. However, I would note, obviously, we have our SWIFT program, which is our flagship financial assistance program, which has provided over $17 billion in projects since its inception, as well as some of the other things like the Texas Water Fund and Proposition 4 that the legislature recently passed in the last session.
Let's put that into people. I think in the plan it said 1 in 4 Texans may not have enough water during a major watering event. How concerning is that?
It's very concerning, which is why it's so important to have this 50-year plan. And some of the history of the Water Development Board was actually created in 1957 during a period of very intense drought. And so this is one of our missions to ensure that during that next drought period, we have the water supplies needed for Texans.
All right. I think a lot of people are home like, hey, we voted for $20 billion in November. What happened to that money? Give us a status of where that $20 billion, because that's over the next several years.
Yeah, and of course, thanks to the leadership of the state officials, governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker, and the voters for approving Prop 4. And so beginning in 2028, we will have $1 billion each year to go towards these water projects. Now, I know that seems like not a lot compared to the 174, but these are meant to kind of stretch those local dollars as well, because the local entities are really the ones who are developing and putting this concrete into the ground. We're there to help as a resource and to help finance these projects, especially the large ones that are very expensive.
Brady, any last thoughts?
No, the water plan is obviously open for public comment right now, so I'd encourage folks to visit our website, as well as view the interactive water plan, where they can look at their local region, the population growth, some of the uses going in, and also some of the projects that have been suggested to help.
What is next? I know we're running out of time, but what's next? What's phase 2?
So we will consider this draft plan, and then before next legislative session, we will approve it, and then that will obviously lead into some of the conversations that'll be had next session.
By January. All right, Brady Franks, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Very interesting.